Oh, it's podcast time, isn't it? What is this one? 40th. Alright, let's start. Hello! Hello!
Hello!
Hello! Hello, and welcome to the 40th broadcast of the Nerdflix podcast. Yes, the 40th. We've made 39 other of these things. It's a lot. Thank you guys so much for, actually listening to these. We've collected quite the number of views on all of these videos, more than I ever thought that I would get on these things. I believe last time I checked, we've over 800 views on all of the videos combined, which is insane. But anyways, yes, I'm very excited today to come at you guys with one of my favorite movies of all time, which is, of course, the classic Edward Scissorhands. So let's get started. I really do love Edward Scissorhands. It is such a good movie, and one of Tim Burton's best, which is why it has become one of Tim Burton's, classics, one of his most popular movies that he's made, because it is a really good, memorable movie. Even if you don't know it was one of Tim Burton's, it still is, it has that feel to it, and it's really one of his best. Edward Scissorhands, just like the name suggests, is about a guy who has scissors for hands. For most of his life, he has lived by himself in a castle, but when he's taken out of the castle, all kinds of things go wrong. He starts cutting bushes, does haircuts, all kinds of wild things that anyone with scissors for hands would do. And yeah, so the movie's really good. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's streaming on Disney+, which is odd because I don't believe it's Disney. I think maybe Disney obviously now owns the rights to it if they're streaming it, but I don't think it was originally a Disney movie. We have definitely covered Burton's work in the past. Even in the last episode of this podcast, we mentioned Tim Burton with his Alice in Wonderland adaptation. We've covered his Batman movies, Beetlejuice, Nightmare Before Christmas, and we've probably done more. And each one of those classics came from some point of inspiration in his life. This one in particular, Edward Scissorhands, came from a drawing he did when he was in high school. I will throw that up on the screen for you guys to see. This is a drawing he did when he wasn't very good at making friends when he was a kid, and this is one of the weird, dark things that he drew as a child. Not really a child, a teenager. And this drawing looks just like Edward Scissorhands, well, in his weird kind of cool goth way of drawing. But the character on the drawing is also entitled Edward Scissorhands, so he's had that name ever since he created this in high school, and he's carried that with him up until the 90s when he made this movie. Even though there are many other characters besides Edward in the film, the entire film is meant to be seen through Edward's eyes. That's why the castle is so dark and gloomy, and the neighborhood he goes to is just so fun and bright, because it's something new to Edward that he hasn't seen before. He's been in the castle for so long, so everything's meant to be seen through his eyes. Whether or not you're a huge fan of this movie like I am, or you've seen it once, or you've just heard of it, you probably know that the man behind Edward Scissorhands, the actor, is Johnny Depp. But there were a lot of other people considered for this role, including people like Tom Hanks, Jim Carrey, and Robert Downey Jr. Now, Tom Hanks would have done an alright job. Jim Carrey would have been interesting to see as Edward Scissorhands. I would have loved to see that. I think Depp did a better job, but Jim Carrey would have been interesting. And Robert Downey Jr., I don't know. I think he'd do an alright job, but not as good as Tom Hanks or Jim Carrey would have done. I think he should just stick to Iron Man movies. Also, Michael Jackson really wanted the role of Edward Scissorhands, but Tim Burton ignored his calls. But out of all the big names that could have played Edward, the studio was really backing the idea of getting Tom Cruise. They really wanted Tom Cruise to play Edward for some reason. They weren't so sure about the plot of the movie and if it would do well, so they thought they needed a big name to back the movie up so that it would succeed. And so Tom Cruise was their number one option for that plan, but it didn't go that direction. The original idea for this film was to have it be a movie musical, and this was an excellent idea. Edward Scissorhands is such a good plot for a musical, and it would have made an amazing musical. But unfortunately, it did not go that way. It just ended up as a regular old movie. And when I saw this, first of all, I was extremely disappointed. And second of all, I remember seeing something about an Edward Scissorhands musical adaptation. So I looked it up, and there was at one point a stage production version of Edward Scissorhands, but I couldn't figure out what it was because it's not exactly a musical, because there's no soundtrack. They can't find a soundtrack for it anywhere. But it was some kind of stage dance production of Edward Scissorhands. But like I said, it wasn't quite a musical. It's fascinating. But this movie would have been an excellent musical. One of the concerns surrounding this movie was the fact that Edward doesn't look so good. I personally think he's alright, you know. He's unique. He's not ugly or anything. But people did think he was ugly. And it was a concern that his ugliness was stopping people from going to see this movie. And in the end, I don't think it was that big of a deal. I do think people, you know, went to see this movie and it became a classic. So I don't think Edward's appearance really got in the way of the movie's success. The town the movie is filmed in is an actual town in Florida. It was newly built at the time that they took it over and they filmed in it. Now, of course, the buildings were tampered with. They were painted, and some of their appearances were changed slightly to look better for the movie. But it was a real town, and it was a town that got extremely hot. It was very difficult to work on the set because it got over 100 degrees, and there was extremely high humidity during the time they were filming. But it is a real town in Florida. One of the things Edward figures out how to do with his scissor hands, and one of the things I think is most iconic about this movie, and I think many fans would agree with me, is the bushes. The way Edward cuts those bushes into different shapes, into dinosaurs and swans and all kinds of things. But unfortunately, these weren't actually real. There were not any bushes that were cut perfectly into these wonderful shapes. They were welded steel, wrapped in chicken wire, and covered in artificial greens, and they were light enough to pick up and move around. So unfortunately, they were not real bushes, but they looked pretty convincing, and I think they became very iconic. Edward is clearly a man of few words, and in fact, he spoke under 170 of them in this movie. He spoke no more than 170 words in total in the entire movie. And it sounds like a lot, but really, there are a lot of words spoken in a featured-length film. There are tons and tons of dialogue, lots of words for every character to say, but Edward only said 170 of them. It's very few in the grand scheme of things. Edward's costume is made of latex leather tape and old sofa bits. I don't know why, and no matter how many times I look at a picture of Johnny in the costume, I can't see the old sofa bits. I don't know. I guess maybe like the rings across the front of the costume. I don't know. But yeah, there's old sofa bits on the costume apparently. And as you would imagine, latex leather tape and old sofa bits would become very hot in the Florida weather, and it did. But Johnny refused to use something to cool him off while filming because he said it kept him in character. You know, Edward had to go around in the heat like that, so he did too. And with every popular movie comes a lot of merchandise. So I'm just doing a search here on Google for Edward Scissorhands merchandise, and we'll see what we get. Starting off with this lovely looking collectible figure from Amazon. And of course, plenty of t-shirts to choose from here. You can get, you know, the basic ones with just the poster. But you can also get some more unique ones, like this one, Edward giving a haircut. I do also like this one as well. The tie-dye is cool. This is really cool. This is a mini book bag from Sideshow Collectibles, and it looks really nice. Hold on, let's zoom in on this thing. Yeah, from Loungefly. Cool brand. I believe they're associated with Funko as well. They make things like, I think they really only make those mini book bags. Looks like the hands from the movie, it's a replica though, not the actual prop, from Entertainment Earth, but they're out of stock and are $800.
So, it's pricey, but they're out of stock anyways. Of course, a lot more t-shirts, figurines. This one from Entertainment Earth, and is $82 for some reason. I don't know what's going on with Entertainment Earth. Lots more t-shirts. Lots more t-shirts. There's always going to be, t-shirts wherever you look. I love this. This is great. That's wonderful. More shirts. I like this one. Tie-dye. Cool, from Hot Topic. Yeah, but let's take a look at Funko. So, going over into the Funko app, there is a bit of variety in the Funko Edward Scissorhands. There's the original one. It is worth $60. This one looks alright. The newer ones look better, but the older Pops don't look as good. It was released in 2013 and is vaulted. And 2013 is 3 years after they started making Pops. Fun fact. There's also a Pop Soda for $12. I believe this one was released more recently. I may be wrong though. Let's check. 2021. Okay, yeah, so last year. Wacky Wobbler, which was the original Funko Pop. This is what they made before Funko Pops. It's worth $33. Released 2007 and is vaulted. Wacky Wobblers are just bobbleheads, really. Another soda, the Chase version of Edward, in his kind of normal person clothes, if that's the word for it. Then Edward with his kind of paper art that he made, that's worth $18, released 2020, and is still available. I'd like to get my hands on that Pop. I do not currently have any Edward Scissorhands Pops. I would like one, but I haven't really been able to find one. Tons of variations of Edward. You can get one of him with the one of the bushes he cut, and you can also get one of Kim and the Inventor. Okay, we're going to shift gears here and start talking about something else that I also found very exciting. The Obi-Wan Kenobi series finally came out. After all this time of waiting and anticipating what this series could feature, it finally released and all episodes are out. All 6 parts. Yeah, I know, only 6. 6 episodes. That's very short for a show that deserved a lot more episodes. But I am pleased with the show. Maybe even more than pleased. I think it was an excellent show. And I'd say the second best Star Wars show to come out so far. I'd say The Mandalorian is the best. But this one was really good and I think deserved the hype it's got. My only complaint is that there wasn't any kind of cameo appearance or even a mentioning or a reference to of Darth Maul at all. There wasn't any Darth Maul. People had theorized that maybe Darth Maul would make an appearance, but he never did. But still, there were a lot of great things about the show. First of all, of course, it featured the return of Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi. I love him. I think he does a really good job as his character. He's great. He's just really good actor, and does a really good job as Obi-Wan Kenobi. We also get to see Darth Vader with Hayden Christensen returning to reprise his role as Anakin/Darth Vader. We also get to see a younger 10-year-old version of Princess Leia, as well as a little bit of 10-year-old Luke. The Grand Inquisitor also gets a live-action appearance. Previously, he had only been in the animated show Star Wars Rebels. Liam Neeson also got to reprise his role as Qui-Gon Jinn as a Force Ghost, of course, but still, it was cool. But the thing that was most exciting out of all of these things was the fact that Obi-Wan Kenobi said his famous line,
"Hello there."
This show was the biggest and most successful Star Wars series to release on Disney Plus so far, and I can see why. The show was so big that over 2 million households, 2 million separate households, all watched the show as it was releasing. But overall, I am pleased with the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. I think the world is pleased with the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, and I can't wait to see the next Star Wars project. that is it for this episode of the Nerdflix podcast. Be sure to listen next time, of course, and thanks so much for listening. I will see you next time on Nerdflix.